Hello, welcome to the Special Report, your news and views program about geek gaming culture on the internet. Coming up in this show today, Tecmo Koei says that Xtreme Beach Volleyball 3 is not going to make it to the West due to a culture clash. My name is JD Shadow, and the Special Report will start right now. Bit of a warning before we start the special report that this is going to contain a bit of sensitive subject matter. Please be advised before you go on a tangent about anything that I am aware of some of the hostilities that have no doubt surfaced within the past year or so about this particular subject, and I don't want to shy away from these particular topics, but there are a lot of sensitivities and a lot of hostilities that have surfaced, so all I ask is people please be mature about how you agree or disagree. On November 18th, a Facebook post from the Dead or Alive game moderators said, quote, "We do not bring DOA X3 to the West and won't have any planned change in the future. Thank you for asking." This is in response to a Facebook post asking if they were going to bring Dead or Alive Xtreme Beach Volleyball 3 to the West, but at the time we didn't know as to what the reason for their not wanting to bring it to the US or the EU shores was. However, later on that very next day, they elaborated on this, and this is where things get a little bit hairy. It says, quote, "Do you know many happenings in video game industry with regards to how to treat females in video game industry? We do not want to talk those things here, but certainly we have gone through in last year or two to come to our decision. Thank you." This of course gets some people obviously upset that Tecmo Koei was evidently censoring themselves. However, this also got some people talking as to why exactly they were doing this. The most popular opinion is that this was in direct correlation with a very extreme push, some would say, to have video games be less sexist to females and to minorities. While some people would say this is a just cause, some people have also said that some people do take it a little too far and go into the nature of vitriol in order to get their point across, which is never a good thing. And some people have also pointed out that this could be in direct correlation with some controversies that have stemmed within the past year, and if you have paid attention to some of the controversies in the past year, you'll definitely know which ones I am talking about, and that is the reason why I said earlier that we would probably have to get into some sensitive subject matter here. For the record, I am not for or against any particular side on that issue. I believe that we can have both a good representation of minorities in video games while being fair to every video game when it comes to reviewing and covering video games in the journalistic industry. And anyone who knows me would know better than to say that I would not be for any of those things, or to say that I'm bigoted in any sort of way. However, some have said that Tecmo Koei is using that whole thing as a scapegoat in order to scale any other criticisms that the game might be subject to. Remember that this is delving into a niche market. It is not one of their best-selling video game franchises, so it is safe to say that they might not believe that the sales are there or that the scores are there, and they might just say we don't want to deal with that sort of issue. And some have decided to point the finger at whoever it is that they want to point the finger at. Okay, so let's first of all get to, before we go any further into why exactly Tecmo Koei did this in the first place, before we even get into their part of the discussion, let's get into this whole debate about sexism in video games and the people that cover them and all this other stuff that has been going on this past year or the past couple of years when it comes to video game journalism and all of this other stuff that's been going on. The reason why I haven't brought it up on my channel, the reason why some people have not brought it up at all or have stopped bringing it up, is not because they don't want to cover it. They do want to cover it. They do want to talk about these things. They do want to say something to this whole issue. The whole thing is they don't want the drama. They don't want the things that are going to come from it. And it's because, is it me or has it gotten very, very vitriolic? It's gotten so nasty and so hostile. I mean, we're going after people's jobs. We're going after people's livelihoods. In some forms, we're going after people's lives. If you take into account the Steven Universe fan artist who almost killed herself after she was getting trolled to hell back by some of the people who decided to take their their movements a little bit too far. And some people, I understand that it can get very uncomfortable to talk about those sort of things and to call out your own side on these sort of things, but it shows to people that you have a sense of sanity if you call out your own, saying, wait a minute, that's taking it a little too far. Wait a minute, that's something we shouldn't be saying. This stuff about tone policing, maybe that is needed. Maybe that sort of thing is necessary, because you'll get into situations like this because maybe Tecmo Koei saw the writing on the wall that they were going to get lambasted, not because of the game being awful or good, whatever, but nearly just because of the fact that somebody had a political agenda and decided to put that into the score of this particular game. And of course, we'll get into that sort of discussion here in just a moment. But the first thing we have to do before we go into that is we have to calm the hell down. And this is something that we've been saying for the past couple of years now, and no one's listened to this. Either they're using the guise of wanting to be inclusive in order to get away with whatever the hell they want, or they don't know any better, or they are really concerned about these sort of issues and are getting lost in the noise of the vitriolic trolls that will interject themselves into any movement. It is not exclusive to any one movement or the other. They are going to get in there regardless. Remember, this is the internet. That has happened for years now. It's not exclusive, and it doesn't define any one person or movement on the internet or anything else. It is something that has occurred since the dawn of the internet. It's going to be that way. You're never going to be able to fully rid yourselves of trolls on the internet. It's always going to happen. The way you have to deal with it is to essentially drown them out through discourse and dialogue. That's how you get rid of them. If you don't address them, then they go away at some point in time. Do not feed the trolls. Now, sometimes they're impossible to ignore because there's these super trolls that just prod. There's some people that have that tactic. And this whole mob mentality where everybody just piles on somebody all at once about whatever issue it is that they have a concern about, whether it be a social issue, political issue, or a gaming issue, or something along those lines. Some people can get overboard. Some people can get overexcited, and they might say something that they later say, you know what, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have acted like that. But right now, it seems that they are happy and they will double down on this sort of mentality that not only do they have to go as a mob, but they also have to be nasty about it. They have to say the most deplorable things and tactics. That doesn't mean you have to listen to every single person in a mob or in a movement or whatever, but here are some people out. Maybe some people who are involved in that are not bad people. Some people are genuinely worried about some of these things that are going on, and maybe we have to listen a little bit better to each other, because you're gonna have these sort of issues come up. You're gonna have this sort of thing like what Tecmo Koei had done with this game that they wanted to probably bring to the West, and they don't want to do it now because they think the whole debate has just gotten so hostile and so vitriolic that they don't want to get involved in the drama. And that's the same with a lot of other people who have seen all of these different viewpoints be addressed. And that's one of the main reasons why when someone brings an opinion up that I disagree with, I'll disagree. There's no problem with me disagreeing with that, but I don't rage quit friends. I don't do that. If that was the case, if I had done that, I would stop being friends with a good bit of people who I am friends with. When I posted that opinion I had about the Baltimore riots, Amber Gala Moon had disagreed with some of the things that I said, and that's alright. There was no problem with the disagreement, and I welcome people who disagree to speak up in the comment section. There's no rule that's saying you can't, but at least be mature about it. At least be open-minded about other people's opinions. Be open-minded. Don't be vitriolic. Don't do what these people who have this mob mentality have done. And I praised Amber for speaking up. As long as she was mature about it, as long as anybody's mature about it, they're free to just say and have a discussion about whatever they want. And if I have acted the way that other people have acted around this sort of issue, then you know what? I would have stopped being friends with her. I would stop being friends with a good bit of people who I am friends with a long time ago, as I have said. But here's the thing. Me and Amber have continued to be friends, and we will continue to be friends because I don't believe in quitting my friends over something like that, in stopping friends over something like that, and blocking people on Twitter over something like that, like some people have done. Like, for instance, Amber was getting some bit of issue about her opinions about the Sailor Moon Crystal sex scene. And I was so close to speaking up, saying, you know what, you guys need to stop doing that. You need to stop doing that, because I'm going to stand up for my friend, even though I might not agree with some of her viewpoints. I'm going to stick up for my friend. I'm going to stick up for the people that I care about, because she's helped me through a good bit of things this past year. I'm going to help her out if she needs help with something, even if I don't agree with everything she's ever said. And have you ever agreed with every single thing that one person has ever said? I don't think you're going to say yes to that. Does that mean that you're gonna stop being friends with that person or stop being a family member to that sort of person? No. Why? Because you still trust them to be there for you when you need them. That's what friends are. Is not like, oh, you're only my friend if I agree with every single viewpoint you ever have on politics or religion or whatnot. That's not how friends work. That's not how I view a friendship. That's not what I view that upon. That's not what I base my friendships upon. I'm sorry, but it's not. Total Biscuit references a quote by Thomas Jefferson, and I think it's very good. It said, "I've never considered a difference of opinion in politics, in religion, and philosophy as a cause for withdrawing from a friend." I think that's a very good quote, and I think people need to remember about that. That there's no reason to get uptight and to quit friends over something like this. There are better things to quit friends over. Learn to be a little bit more open-minded about these sort of things, and maybe we'll get stuff done. Maybe things will change. Maybe not everybody involved in these sort of things are the devil. And I understand that some people are really sensitive about these sort of issues, and I understand that, and I apologize for those people who see this as a detriment. But maybe it's something that deserves to be said. Maybe it's something that has to be said. We do have to be better. We have to gain our humanity back about these sort of issues, or else we're never going to change, and this is going to just drive us even further apart. This is going to drive a further wedge. And this is what Tecmo Koei has essentially done. They have said, we don't want to get into this battle. We don't want to put out a game that people are going to see as objectifying women in a negative light, and is going to be so vicious that they're going to say, hey, you should go kill yourself, or you get blacklisted by media outlets or something along those lines. I essentially don't blame them for wanting to stay out of that battle. I don't blame them for doing that sort of thing. I don't blame them for saying, hey, we don't want to get into that. And for the most part, some media outlets are proving Tecmo Koei correct. When PlayAsia said, you know what, we're going to offer the Japanese version or whatever version they're going to offer, yeah, they labeled certain people who were going to complain about that. Yes, I understand that that might have set off some people, but at the same time, I think it's the fact that they're selling it at all to the Western audiences. And that's what Tecmo Koei was scared of. They were scared of some viewers scoring this game sorely on whether or not it was objectifying any minority, whether it be women, blacks, or whoever. They were scared that they were going to not even look at any of the other things that what makes a game, or what makes a game fun. And if you take a look at how some game media outlets have affected the Metacritic scores, which affects what some people's jobs will be on the line or not, how some people will be able to feed their families, how some people will be able to put a roof over their heads. This is a very serious concern that some video game developers have gone through, and some video game publishers like EA have actually used Metacritic. It is something that has actually happened. So yeah, there was that whole concern that Tecmo Koei would essentially get criticism just for that, and that would be the only thing that would ever affect the score that a reviewer would give that particular video game. And that is not what you should score a game on. Is there your political concerns? Yes, they can be there. Yes, you can express them, but they shouldn't really affect the score unless you are going to say to the public that that is what you're going to score the game on. You should score a game, in my opinion at least, on whether or not it has good replayability factor, whether the people who are going to be interested in that sort of game are going to have fun with it, if it's not trying to hide what it is, which in this case the game never really did. We all know Dead or Alive, we all know the Xtreme Beach Volleyball franchise and what it does. People know what they're getting themselves into when they buy a game like that. There really is no secret as to what that game is, and people should not be very surprised about what they're getting themselves into when they buy a game like that. You know what it's gonna be like. And there's a difference between agreeing with the game subject matter and agreeing with the right to make that sort of game. Here's the thing, if you don't like a game, if you don't like the subject matter, there's one thing you can do: not buy it. That's just it. That's just what it is. If the game is popular, they will continue to make it. If you support it, they will continue to engage in making that sort of game. But if you don't like the subject matter for whatever reason, and you support it anyway with your dollars and your money, then And that is on you if they make another game like that, because you've shown them that, hey, I'm going to support you financially for making a game like that. But in this case, in this particular case with Tecmo Koei, some of the blame, I'm sorry, some of the blame has to be on them. And the reason why is because they caved to this. They really did. They said for whatever reason they had that we're not going to bring the game to the Western audiences. And that is on them because they censored themselves. They censored themselves in such a way. Now, can you blame them? Maybe not, but it's still their fault because they're the ones, or part of it is their fault because they're the ones who made that decision. I'm sorry, but they have to have some sort of responsibility on this one. I'm not going to defend them full throttle on this. This is partially on them because they said, hey, we're not going to deal with it. And in a sense, they took the ability to choose away from the consumer. In this sense, they say, you know what, we're going to make that decision for you. We don't think that this game is going to sell well. It's not going to be reviewed well. People are going to be biased about this. So we're just not going to deal with the issue that might be addressed. So we're just going to say, you know what, screw it, we're not going to bring it here. But it's got to be left up to the consumer in order to make that decision. You can't just make the decision for them. That takes away their right as a consumer. And who knows what that niche market, provided there is such a one for this particular product, actually contains. It may contain some males, obviously, but who's to say that females don't want to take a gander at this game? Who's to say they're going to be offended by the subject matter? Can keep in mind from all the fan service that there is obviously fan service. There's no denying this fan service in its purest form, but keep in mind that this is also a volleyball game. And how many volleyball games have we actually seen that has gotten into the mainstream? Not many. The niche audience could also be the volleyball audience who has yet to see a game have the mechanics of a true volleyball game, at least what I figure. I'm not the biggest volleyball expert, but I have seen a lot of praise as it pertains to the accuracy of how a volleyball game is played, so it might appeal to that audience as well, and they don't mind the fan service at all. They might not care about it. They might not see it as a big issue. So by depriving the West of a game that has that sort of mechanics in it, you deprive them of that choice. You deprive them of that option. You deprive them of that as well. But yes, I blame them for making that decision. However, I don't think that while they shoulder some of the blame and they should probably rethink that decision, I can see why they made it. I can see what their reasoning was. It's because of the manner we go about discussing these things. And it's not really discussion. It's just us arguing and just shooting out vitriol at each other. And that's no way to deal with these sort of issues. We need to open up a dialogue. We need to open up some form of mind. We need to have better discussion, not arguments, not vitriol. Like I said before, we just have to get better at discussing these types of topics, or else it's just going to end up in stuff like this happening and we're just going to be angry all the time at each other. And that's something that doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be full of hate and anger and outrage over these types of things. Better understanding is the key in order to come up with solutions for these things. And being upset over games like this is not going to help people. It is not going to help people to push somebody to not want to release a game because of these types of reasons. Regardless of if it was a real reason or not, the fact of the matter is that they shouldn't have to feel scared to release a game. If you don't want to play a game, that is fine. You don't have to buy it. But don't try to keep other people from buying the games that you don't think they should be playing. Nobody's holding a gun to your head saying you have to buy the game. No one's saying you have to buy Xtreme Beach Volleyball or Hatred or any of the other games that you might deem offensive. No one's saying you have to buy them. And no one's saying that you can't be offended by it. No one's saying that you shouldn't be offended by these sort of, but people need to understand that just because it's offensive to you, it might not be offensive to anybody else. A lot of people might be offended, but you don't know that. Just because you're offended doesn't mean anybody else will be offended about the exact same thing. People have varying levels of when enough is enough. And I encourage people to say their opinions about these types of things, but it has to be done in the correct way. It has to be done in a way that it doesn't step on anybody else's toes in the process. All you're doing by creating this outrage is to give him more notoriety. Now people are really interested in this game. Now people are really interested in what this is all about because of the controversy. Now you're giving it more publicity and more coverage and more eyeballs on the product. And I hope no one takes that the wrong way. Of course, you shouldn't ignore any problems that people have with a product if it becomes too much. If enough people do say something about it, then perhaps things will change. However, telling somebody they should go kill themselves or they should set themselves on fire or something like that is not going to solve anything. All that's really going to do is to show to people that you are no better than the people you're saying are the real threat, people who you deem to be the real mob in this scenario. So no, there is no innocent party in this. Tecmo Koei, for censoring this game for the West for whatever reason they actually did have, and for the people who are cheering this decision and the people who probably pushed Tecmo Koei to make this decision, because while there are some very good people on both sides of this argument, the bottom line is that some of these people's tactics are not helping anybody, and it's just throwing more fuel to the fire, a fire that has been growing and growing and growing, and no one seems to want to put it out somehow. I hope Tecmo Koei rethinks this decision, because in the end of the day, the consumer needs to be the one who makes the decision for themselves about a particular product, not a company or any group, regardless of what they say they might be fighting for. And that's gonna do it for this edition of Special Report. Thanks again for watching and listening. I was nervous about making this one as I was with the last one. I thank you guys for taking the time to listen to my opinions. Even if you don't agree with me, that is just fine, you don't have to. But please share your thoughts and comments down below. I do love to read those, even if you don't agree with me. I never take disagreements personally, as long as they entice discussion and dialogue and not just full of vitriol. Those will be ignored because dialogue should be very much encouraged. My name is JD Shadow, and that just happened.